Hi, I'm Dale Fick Campbell. I'd like to tell you some stories about my grandparents, Carl and Alma Fick. This is the farm where they raised their family near Rosebud in Falls County, Texas. Like 17% of the people who immigrated to the United States, the forebears of Carl and Alma Fick came from Germany and German-speaking regions of Europe. According to the Texas State Historical Association, Germans were lured to Texas with descriptions of the abundant game and fish, fertile land, and low taxes. Texas was promoted as an earthly paradise. So my ancestors arrived in Texas from different parts of Europe at different times, meeting other German-speaking people, marrying and having families, and working the land with many generations following them. My grandmother's father was Anton Johann Friedrich Schrader, born in 1856 in Godswarden, Germany. He immigrated to the United States through Galveston in 1881 at the age of 25. Anton's wife, my grandmother's mother, was Caroline Sophia Margareta Denker. She was born in 1862 in Sageberg Province, Holstein, Germany. Her own parents were Madeline Eggert and Ludwig Denker, who died in Sharp, Texas in 1903 and 1904. Anton Schrader and Caroline Denker were married in Fayette County, Texas in 1883. In 1885, they moved to Milam County on the south bank of Alligator Creek. 2 years later, they moved 3 miles south to the community near Sharp, Texas, where they lived until they died. Anton is shown in federal census records as being a farmer. They had 4 children, including Alma Frederica, my grandmother, who was born in Milam County in 1904. My grandfather's father was Emil Carl Fick, and his father also had the name Carl Fick. The elder Carl Fick had been born in Germany in 1857 and arrived in the United States in 1871. He married Louise Wolfe in 1881, and they lived in the Detmold community near Thorndale, Texas, in Milam County. They were members of a Lutheran church there, and Carl was one of the 3 men who donated land for the Detmold Cemetery where he and Louise are buried. Their son, Emil Carl Fick, married Lena LaFair, my grandfather's mother. They lived in the Sharp community in Milam County, where my grandfather, Carl Adolf Fick, was born in 1908. Now, Lena LaFair's family was an interesting bunch. Her own parents were Adolf Jacob Daniel, or AJD, LaFair, and Mary Wilhelmina Giese. Lena's grandfather was Jacob LaFair. He had been born in 1823 in Bavaria. He immigrated to Texas at the age of 23 on a ship named the Colchis that departed from Antwerp, Belgium, and arrived in Galveston in 1846. Jacob LaFair was attracted by the California gold rush in the late 1840s and early 1850s. According to our family, he brought back gold and for many years kept it concealed. Jacob LaFair married Carolina LaLater in 1852 and acquired U.S. citizenship on August 2, 1856 in Columbus, Texas. My grandmother, Alma Frederica Schrader, was born on October 8, 1904 in Sharp, Texas. She was baptized 2 months later on December 18th of that year in a Lutheran church in Sharp. My grandfather, Carl Adolf Fick, was born on February 27, 1908 in Sharp, Texas. He was baptized 4 months later on June 18th of that year at the Lutheran church of his grandparents in Thorndale, Texas. The Lutheran churches of my German ancestors were the center of their communities. My grandmother was required to learn the Luther Small Catechism both in German and English, and we have her copies of these catechisms. She was confirmed at the age of 13 on May 26, 1918, while World War I was still going on. My grandfather was confirmed 5 years later on August 5, 1923, when he was 15 years old. Apparently, he learned the catechism only in English. This photo shows him with his confirmation class. Both of my grandparents grew up in Milam County, Texas. I once asked them what it was like growing up there.
What was it like growing up in Milam County, Texas? Grandma, you go first.
Oh, I guess it was fun. We enjoyed it growing up there. We really think Model County is home for both of us. Because that's where we spent all the time.
More than Falls County?
Yes, no. We moved to Falls County and we're here 55 years in Falls County. Before that was Model County. That's a little community named Sharp.
Sharp.
Lived out in the country.
Both of you lived, considered Sharp a big town?
Yeah.
And you lived on a farm?
Yes.
With whom?
With my dad.
Any brothers and sisters?
Yes, there was one brother that lived with us for a few years, and he got married. And then my daddy and I lived together until we got married.
Well, what did your parents raise on the farm?
Oh, my dad was, we raised cotton and corn. And he run a country market for about 5-6 years.
So they're in Sharp?
No,
Along
right
the
at
road?
the house. He had a little house there where he cut the meat up in. Get butchered twice a week.
Was it your beef cattle?
Huh?
Was it your beef cattle?
Oh, no, in other words, kind of worked the beef club. A lot of them put cattle in there and then ate the cattle out. And the scraps, I carried them to the ranch about 4 or 5 miles on the Little River, which is on the river. The chili meat and so on.
Didn't both of your folks raise cotton?
Yes.
Did everybody around here raise cotton?
That's the main crop, cotton.
Did you run many cattle?
And boy, raised cotton. My daddy always had planted from 26 to 32 acres. And you get a bale to the acre.
Carl Fick and Alma Schrader were both born in Sharp, and so they had known each other since they were children.
So we had neighbors.
Neighbors?
How close?
Or the land adjoined.
Although my grandfather was 4 years younger than my grandmother, they began courting each other. My grandfather recalled that Alma's family spoke German more fluently than his, and her father once chided him for his improper German.
I think one time you told me a story about going to, when you were courting, and you went to her house and you were speaking German with her father.
Oh, the whole bunch of old Germans there.
And
I talk German and I translate it. You take German, you know that much about German. You translate it, well, you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. And it was something about you used the word Baron to talk about what was
Peaches Baron.
Yeah.
In German, you say Gesacht. Is that right?
I guess.
And I better not say what the rest of it.
What did he tell you?
In it.
Yeah.
But he said that you need to learn how to speak proper German.
Yeah.
He told her that I shouldn't even try to talk German. I couldn't do no better.
My grandparents were married on December 2nd, 1928, in Milam County, Texas. Their wedding portrait shows Alma's dress falling just below her knees, very much in the fashion of 1928. Their first child, Doris Evelyn, was born in Milam County in July of 1929. In 1930 or 31, my grandparents bought this 100-acre farm in Falls County. My grandparents explained that they purchased the farm for $78.50 an acre and financed it with Grandma's inheritance money.
Now, you bought your land outside of Rosebud in 1930?
In April.
April? Who did you buy it from?
T.H. Freeman.
And how many acres?
100 acres.
78 and a half an acre.
78.5 cents an acre?
And
$78.50.
Oh, $78. $78.50 an acre. That's
The house had been built about 8 years earlier in the fall and winter of 1923-24. It had a white picket fence in the front and a red fence around the garden and in the back. It had beautiful white roses and a hackberry tree in the yard. It also had a pomegranate tree, a jujube tree, and a plum thicket where they kept bees. They planted a peach orchard right away. They also raised chickens. They told a tale of once when there was a heavy rain and many of the chickens drowned. Then another time someone cut the wire and chickens got out.
I remember when we raised chickens, when we had that fish orchard out here.
I built that chicken house after we moved up there. Tore down and rebuilt. Right down the corner with them bakeries there. Mr. Dodson was talking to me and he looked, dealt around on that wire. He says, look at here, somebody cut this wire here. And the next night we found somebody got all out of rolled down the red hill. He was about 21 or 22. But that night I found out.
There was a
About
lot of
21
turkeys,
or
too.
22 of them all rolled down the red hill.
Selling eggs was one of the ways the family survived, at 25 cents a dozen. After moving to Falls County, the Ficks attended the Salem Lutheran Church on the prairie west of Rosebud. It was in their home near Rosebud that the remaining children were born. Their son, Carl Leroy, was born in March of 1931. Daughter Edith Carolyn was born in January of 1933, and daughter Irene Marilyn in June of 1936. A baby, Caroline, was born in February of 1939 but died at birth. She is buried in the Woodlawn Cemetery in Rosebud. Daughter Janet Joycelyn was born in March of 1944. Times were tough during the Depression in the 1930s, and paying taxes was a challenge.
What were your taxes on the property that year?
Way over $100.
Uh-oh.
We paid $50 on Blooming Highway down there.
That's where that, selling that, that's where that you had to sell them 2 cans that sheep.
Yeah.
We went to the loan company, and I just happened to ask him if we didn't make our payment, if they would take the place. And he just answered me, Mr. Fick, they can take your place if you owe just $1 on it.
In 1936, Texas celebrated its 100th birthday with a huge state fair in Dallas. The family had just purchased a 1934 Chevy and made the trip to Dallas to see the fair.
The old Model T Ford finally quit, and you bought the 34 Chevy in 1936. Because we had a car, we went to the Dallas State Fair, the Centennial Fair, in 1936. And Irene was a baby, and Mama and Daddy carried Irene all over those fairgrounds. And Mama had on a new pair of shoes, and her feet were killing her. And we got up, I must have been 7 years old, and we must have gotten up in the middle of the night because, as I recall, we got there when those fair gates opened. And we probably stayed there till they closed.
I know it was dark when we left Dallas.
We went to the fair in Dallas, and had 36 Chevrolet, a 34 Chevrolet and 36. Irene was about 4 months old, and Mama had bought a new pair of shoes, and they hurt her feet all during the day. But what I remember about the fair was the fountains that squirted water in the air. Now, I was 5 years old at that time. And then I was also remember the testing of ball bearings at the Ford plant where these round circular steel balls fell off of a point, and if they didn't bounce right, they weren't good balls. That's about all I remember about the fair. But when we started back, Dad got lost in Dallas, and he asked for directions at a service station, and they got him on, and that was dark already, and they got him directed, and we got on home, and that's all I remember about that.
2 years later, in 1938, electricity came to the Fick farm.
I remember a man from the government came by. Must have been a Saturday it was one morning when I was at home, came by and if we asked if we were on electricity. And Mama said, well, go down in the field and ask my husband. So I went down the field with that guy, and he asked my daddy if he owned electricity, and my daddy said yes, and so the folks down the road signed up also for electricity, and so we were going to get electricity. But I remember I cried about that because I was afraid our house would burn down if we had electricity. So I guess the first move of the men coming out to do work was that I remember was to drill holes. They had a big drill on the back of a truck, and I was there observing it. And when they hauled the holes out, I was out there observing it too. And when they stuck the holes in the poles in the ground,
Yeah.
and drilled a hole for the brace, Mama let me out there.
Yeah.
That's before I started school, I guess. But then we got electricity turned. Now, Mom and Daddy were furnished little instructions on how to wire the house.
Yeah.
And they wired it. And then when they first turned it on, I think they blew a fuse.
Yeah.
But I know they went back and figured out what they did wrong. They thought. And then on my 7th birthday, in the evening, the lights came on. I know I was so excited about that.
My grandparents and their children told stories about life on their farm. Grandma always had to investigate sounds that she heard.
I heard something knocking against the lady's work out there. And I went out there and investigated. It was a skunk trying to get under the house, but it had a can strip. And she was just going around the corner then, and I think I called Daddy then. And he shot her. Didn't you
At
shoot
the
her?
corner.
Yeah.
But
Did
that,
that tin can come off after I shot her?
I guess it did.
Did the tin can cut 4 corners?
But she got her head in there and couldn't get it out.
They remembered creatures getting into the hen house. A sound would alert them to a fox, a possum, a skunk, a snake, or a raccoon. Grandpa remembered fondly his dog Hector, who would kill water moccasins. They remembered one snake under the house between 2 boards that got its tooth stuck and couldn't get out. The family traveled to Sharp for family occasions, including Grandfather Fick's birthday.
And back in those days, they ate at 3 tables. They ate at a men's table, a woman's table, and a kid's table. But I never ate at the kids' table because my Grandpa Fick would get me eating up with him. He'd put me on his left side, and I know that my cousins resented that, but that's what he did.
Yeah.
And he was also my sponsor. And many times when I was growing up, he'd come up to Rosebud on my birthday, and he'd give me 50 cents.
So that when you say sponsor for baptism, he was your godfather, basically.
Yeah. And when he would come to visit us, he'd have those sunshine cookies, and if we would get up on his lap, he'd give us some cookies.
Grandma made white bread, 3 loaves at a time, which would last a couple of days. They stored potatoes under the house, 18 inches off the ground. They added a room to the house in 1946, and indoor plumbing was added in the 1960s. All the children were educated in schools in Rosebud. They all graduated from high school and went on to college. Education was highly valued in the family. At one point, all 5 children were graduating from one phase of their education. This story was picked up by the wire services and was printed in newspapers around the state. In December 1950, Doris married Herb Rast, who had come as pastor to the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church in Rosebud, and the Ficks transferred their membership to this congregation. The children of Doris and Herb Rast are Richard, Darrell, Jeanette, and Keith. In July 1952, Carl married Waverly Cadenhead. Their children are Dale, Gloria, Melissa, Carl Milton, Leah, Jana, and Randall. In June of 1953, Edith married Clarence Smith. Their children are Sheila and Calvin. In June 1957, Irene married Wayne Haas. Their children are Larry, Kevin, and John. In December 1964, Janet married Billy Querum. Their children are Ronald and Christina, who died in 1988. Family was important. Family gatherings continued to be frequent through the years. Carl and Alma celebrated their 25th and 50th wedding anniversaries with big celebrations in Rosebud. Alma's 80th birthday was celebrated at the Brown Library in Rosebud in 1984. Visits with family members were always fun occasions, both for adults and children. Many hours were spent playing 42, walking around the farm, visiting relatives around the area, and just sitting around and talking. The grandkids always looked forward to spending some of their summers at the farm. They had many fond memories of playing cards, board games, and Chinese checkers with Grandma, helping her cook, pick vegetables from the garden and fruit from the orchard, washing and hanging clothes on the line, taking a nap out under a huge tree, and enjoying a glass of soda as a special treat in the afternoons. They all remember going into town. Grandma would give each of us a bit of money, and we would spend lots of time walking around the dime store looking for just the right item to buy. Carl and Alma had 18 grandchildren and many great-grandchildren who were born before and after they died. One very special thing Grandma did for all her grandchildren was to make quilts that she presented to each of them when they graduated from high school. My grandmother Alma died in February 1991, and my grandfather Carl died in February of 1992. They are both buried in the Woodlawn Cemetery in Rosebud next to their infant daughter Caroline. I made a video recording of my grandparents in 1984. Much of it was lost, but I remember that at the end of that interview in Mom and Daddy's bedroom in Houston, I asked my grandmother if there was anything else she would like to say to future generations. She paused for a moment, her eyes teared up a bit, and she said, "We love you." I think this is what they would want us to remember.